Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Paul Garcia. I'm the founder and the clinic director of Pacific Coast Kinesiology Center. We're a wellness center in Orange County, California. We're doing a series on intermittent fasting. Okay, we've talked about the benefits of intermittent fasting. We've talked about how to intermittent fast, and today we're gonna go through troubleshooting of intermittent fasting. Okay, it's a game changer for myself, for my patients. When people become fat adapted, when they are successful with intermittent fasting, for your health, it's a true game changer. Okay, but there are certain people that struggle, certain people that their bodies won't adapt. They won't be able to use fat for energy. They're stuck burning sugar for energy. We're going to talk about why that is. So to recap, what intermittent fasting is having longer times between meals. So for me, it's eating between noon and 7 o'clock at night. That's when I have my food. And then from 7 until noon the next day, I'm fasting. Okay, it's hence the term intermittent fasting. So it's just extending the time between meals. It's not eating less calories overall. It's just having more time of no food. And that's when the magic happens. Okay, so if you haven't watched the previous two videos, please go back and watch those, and it'll explain a lot more in depth about the benefits and about how to intermittent fast. But let's kind of jump into troubleshooting, all right? Because there are certain people that will say, okay, this is going to be good for you. Go home, start intermittent fasting, and then we get a call and they're struggling. You know, maybe they feel more bloated, or maybe they have a really hard time concentrating, and this is after that first day or two where your body has to adapt. Okay, so there are definitely certain people that are going to struggle, but there's a reason why. Okay, so normally a healthy cell should be able to adapt. It should be able to use sugar for energy when it needs to, but when there's no sugar available and when there's no food available, our cells should be able to use fat for energy. All right, so that's a normal, healthy cell. So what we're looking at the mechanisms that make those cells unhappy, okay, that make them inflamed, that cause stress to those cells. And what I find at the office is there's four big factors. There's four main factors. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about food sensitivities. Food sensitivities are very common, right? And maybe, I don't know, food sensitivities, people think that if you have a food, it's got to be like peanuts or something, like an anaphylactic reaction, literally like your throat swells up, or your lips get all puffy, or you get this huge rash. And obviously that's an anaphylactic reaction, that's a severe reaction, so that's important. But there's so many other, what we call more of a food sensitivity, where it's not an immediate reaction. Okay, you don't feel bad, you don't feel really any symptoms immediately. It's more of a delayed reaction. Okay, so maybe you don't feel anything until the next day. Maybe you're a little bit more fatigued, or maybe you just have a harder time concentrating, so a little brain fog. You know, maybe you've just kind of gained a little bit of water, you're a little bit more bloated, retaining water. These are common signs of food sensitivities. And our bodies can be really sensitive to any foods, okay, and it's different from person to person. Myself, gluten was a big factor. My son, we had him on a gluten-free diet. He was sensitive to corn. Okay, we see people that are sensitive to dairy, that are sensitive to soy, that are sensitive to, the grain family in general. Sometimes it's blueberries. So it could be, any food at all. Eggs are another common one. So generally what I'll recommend for patients to do is to do what we call an elimination diet. Okay, an elimination or an anti-inflammatory diet. You can find those online. You could Google it. If you want, below, add say, hey, send me the list of foods, and we can, make that available to you. But there's, a variety of different lists that show foods to eat during an elimination diet and foods to avoid. Okay, so very important. If you haven't already tried elimination diet, I think you should. It's very, very important, and it could be a game changer for your health. Okay, so food sensitivities are a big one. Environmental toxins. Okay, this is another big category. Okay, when the cell isn't working right, when the cell can't adapt, a lot of times it's because toxins have accumulated in that cell membrane and the cell just can't communicate anymore. It's affected the cell receptors, and that cell just kind of isolates itself and it's in survival mode, and it's just it won't be able to adapt to use fat for energy. So intermittent fasting is going to be a struggle. So the different types of toxins that we see, we see heavy metal toxins like mercury is a big one from amalgam fillings from fish. Okay, we see aluminum. Aluminum's another big one from deodorants or antiperspirants, from aluminum cans and aluminum cookware. Okay, also lead is a big one. Lead tends to be passed down from generation to generation. Our parents lived in the lead generation. There's lead paints, there was lead gas fumes, and those accumulate and then kind of get passed down from generation to generation. Okay, we also see pesticides and herbicides that are used heavily on crops. Okay, so if you're not eating organic, you will be eating pesticides and herbicides. These things are toxic to our cells. They will not allow your cell to adapt to be able to become fat adapted. Okay, so heavy metals are a big factor. Hidden infections. This is probably the biggest category personally that I see in the office. Okay, hidden infections can include, maybe a virus. Maybe you have a subclinical virus that your body's dealing with, that your immune system is constantly struggling with. Okay, and if you're spending that energy and that commitment, your body's really trying to deal with this virus, it's not going to have the time, the energy, the resources for those cells to be truly happy and to respond in a healthy way. Okay, so viruses, also infections in the gut. Okay, this is the biggie. So if we have a bacterial overgrowth in the gut, if we have a yeast overgrowth, if we have parasites, okay, these things are more common than you would realize. Okay, we see them with many patients every single day. And again, if your body's dealing with this chronic stress, this chronic source of inflammation, your cells are going to have a really hard time adapting again. So it's critical to get these underlying root causes dealt with, and once you deal with these, then intermittent fasting, then you're going to be able to reap the benefits or reap the rewards of intermittent fasting. Okay, and the last one is nutritional deficiencies. Okay, so if your body's deficient in nutrients, okay, a big one that we see might be vitamin D, especially right now. Right now it's wintertime. We tend not to be outside as much. The days are shorter. We're not exposing ourselves to natural sunlight. So generally our vitamin D levels go down, which makes us more susceptible to the flu and cold. But in general, if if our cells are missing specific nutrients, they're not going to be able to adapt. Okay, if you're deficient in B vitamins, it's another common deficiency that we see, or omega-3 oils, or if we have too many of the omega-6 oils, so imbalances, that creates an unhealthy cell environment, and you will struggle to intermittent fast. Okay, so again, if I highly encourage people to try to intermittent fast. I think it's a very important process, almost a necessary process for our body to be able to express health the way that it should. Okay, but if you try and if you're struggling, look for one of these factors. Look for these underlying factors. Okay, so I hope that helps, and we'll see you guys on the next video.